What's up, everyone? Joe here. I'm in Daytona, Florida.
Yeah,
At Audioscape with our buddy Chris Yetter. He's Mr. Audioscape, right?
that's correct.
Well, okay. So today we're going to focus on variable mu tube compressors, and you have two of them in your product line.
Yes, we do.
So let's go over them.
All right, I feel like Vanna White here. Okay, no, this is one of our later releases here. This is the ASA 6A, modeled after the original RCA BA6A, released in 1951. It's a big, chunky compressor.
It is, yeah. It's been off the market a long time. Right?
Yes.
This is a rare piece.
Yes, I don't think it's really been brought back in a commercial form ever, really. I think it's one of those things where maybe a lot of builders are like, I want to build this because it's awesome and amazing, but they after they build it, like, I don't want to sell this. and that's definitely... I can definitely relate to that, but it's truly a labor of love. It's one of the coolest, classiest things we do. And
it's beautiful.
I just stare at this thing endlessly. I love it so much. It's got 9 total tubes. 7 out of the 9 tubes we use are new old stock. So the only tubes that are new production are the power tubes, for obvious reasons. You know, power tubes typically, like 6v6s and that, they do tend to have less of a life. Like in guitar amps, you're usually going to change out your power tubes before you change out your preamp tubes. Mm-hmm. I think most guitar players don't even think to change their preamp tubes in the whole life of like history they own their amps, right? Yeah. So it's that's one thing we do go new production on, and that we're using a pair of Tad red basses for that, which is what we settled on. And yeah, everything else, like I mentioned, new old stock. They don't make new tubes like this, obviously. They don't make these old black metal tubes here. They don't make these rectifiers. They don't make a 5R4 rectifier nowadays, or some of these other tubes here. So,
well, okay. So question for you. I know you mentioned that the original, as beautiful as it was, and you tried to stay true to it in so many ways, but there's also some expectations in modern production worlds that you made some modifications and enhancements.
Yeah. So both of these in particular, they were broadcast compressors, right? They were just chuck them in the rack and forget about them. So they just had stuff set up for usually fixed release times. They weren't thinking like, obviously even studio production wasn't really much of a thing back then, right?
Yeah. No, this was trying to keep AM radio signals in check, right?
Yeah. It was really, these are what these tools were created for. Later on, we discovered, wow, these things rule for studio use. Yeah. But there are some things that we can add that don't take away from the original design, but still add some flexibility. And that's what we aim to do with both of these in particular. So whereas we just spoke about, with the old Pultec designs, we pretty much kept those pretty classic 1-to-1. They're, they are super useful as is. This, we felt like there were some things we had to, some options that were important, but at the same time, we still have it where you can get the stock sound quite easily. Yeah. So you can see that here with this. One thing we added, I guess we'll just start. We added a simple side chain high pass, 120 hertz. Yep. So, obviously that's just quick and dirty, super useful. We didn't want to go too crazy there. One thing that's extremely useful with this is a threshold control. And adding that, it was just a fixed resistor on the original. All it is, it's a 2-watt resistor, so you have to use a beefy pot there. But now it's got so much, the originals are known to be super grabby, especially as you start cranking that input control. So by having this, you don't have to, go too crazy with, like I was hearing, a lot of producers, mixers, they have to really just duck down their signal on the input before it would hit their originals. So that was something I was like, okay, we need to add that control.
Would this be, okay, so for example, on some gear that has an output, preamplifier is a great example. If you have a gain knob as well as an output trim, it can affect how much harmonic content you're driving through it. So
this simply affects the grabbiness on the input side of the circuit. Gotcha. So, as you start cranking this up, you find, oh man, I'm just hitting it too hard. You can duck this down and it's going to be less grabby on the input side. So,
all right. So it's more of a compression.
Yeah. Think about almost like a pad or even just a pad kind of on the input. You're just ducking down the signal here on the device itself instead of doing it from your send or whatever into it.
Understood.
That would be a good way to think about that. The attack, was adding a variable attack release, super important.
Oh yeah.
It makes it so much more of a different modern compressor. It makes it very difficult to balance it too. So we made our lives a lot harder adding these controls, because doing the balance of the gain reduction tubes, which we'll talk here about in a little bit, having those be variable. Well, if you speed up that release, you're going to start noticing artifacts a lot faster, and you're going to have a much more narrow range for where you can actually balance the device.
The whole beauty of these things, why they sound so great now, is because they're inherently slow on the release.
Yeah.
That's how they get that. When they call the original one, when they call this the stay level, that's what they meant, right?
Yeah, because you see all these recovery mode times that we have here. Well, the original just had a resistor that was fixed for slowest. So the slowest setting that you would think, oh, I'm never going to use this slowest setting. That's how the original gate stay level was. It just was fixed at that, and the level, that's what it meant. It just stayed because, it would be so slow to come back.
Right.
So it's just going to grab your vocal, and it's going to hold, or whatever it is, whatever program material, it's just going to hold it there.
Yeah, yeah. So on the attack and release, are there markings for the original? So if you want to copy the exact thing that it did,
and we can give Ryan some crap about this. They're really slow. It says stock right here on on what is considered the fastest.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
The fastest attack time here. And then what's actually around noon on the release control is what is stock for the release. And you'll see it is pretty slow. I don't think it's as slow, in use as obviously the stay level was, but it's a really slow release time.
And another thing about these things, correct me if I'm wrong, the attack and release time, they're not 100%. It's like if it says 1 second, that's not necessarily what it means, depending on how
much
hard.
like the ratio is variable on the input as you start turning that up. Everything is sort of playing together in a particular way and shifts
like program dependent kind of.
Extremely
that terminology comes into play really strong on these.
Yeah, it really does. And I mean, even a lot of, we'll talk about the opto later, but that's program dependent as well. You'll see in the manual as far as how the optical cell works. And so, the release time, attack time is going to be different, from 15 to 20 dB than it is from 5 to 7 dB even, with where you're hitting it, or just the type of material you're putting through it. So that's why these hashes don't have specific values.
Gotcha. Exactly.
And that's, I think that's cool.
I do too. I think everything that's quirky about these is why we embrace it, is why we should embrace it.
I respect those that like to get super clinical, but at the same time, just dialing something in and it sounds good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what this forces you to do.
Right.
It puts you in that mindset of like, I'm just going to turn some things and I'm going to find that sweet spot. And I'm not going to worry about, is this millisecond of
not necessarily the rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Like bus compressor thing that we're used to. Oh, I'm going to do auto, or I'm going to do 100 milliseconds. That's not, if you need to turn it a little bit for that song, you turn it. So what do we have next?
Okay, so the meter switching. One thing you'll notice on both of these, you see an off control. And these weren't on the original. One thing we did, it is pretty much like, I call it a quick and dirty bypass of the compression section. It just turns it off. But there are some things that can, like obviously release and attack can still, if you shift those, you can still kind of hear a little bit of a difference. But if you just want grit, you want to just know like what, you just want to turn up something and not get compression and hear the dirt of the device, you can get that as well, which I think is cool.
I do too.
It's not something you're obviously going to use all the time, but there might be that one rare instance where you do. And I think that's great. You can just get the sound of the tubes, the transformers, much like bypass on a Pultec EQP or EQ. You can hear that sound of the amp itself. And another cool thing we added was the negative feedback switch, which this reduces the negative feedback, adds edge, harmonics. It just, think of it like supercharging the gain reduction section, all of that. So you're going to see it's going to compress more. It's going to get more distortion a little bit, but there's something really pleasing about it. It's almost like that effect, like you're talking about cranking the input, turning down the output, and you're getting more saturation.
Interesting.
In use, that's what it's like. From an end user side, I guess that's the best way I can describe that.
Now, if any of our friends are watching, oh, I'm sorry, we have another knob.
Oh yeah, just the output control. I was just going to say we did actually. These are gain monsters. The originals, you could just plug plug a mic into it and go if you wanted to. We did make the gain range more usable, so we did pat it down a little bit on the output. Not crazy, just a couple dB. So you actually can, instead of having the knob right there. And I know this happens even on the stay level. You know, they're notorious for you can't get any, you can't drive the output stage at all. And that's been some of the biggest complaints with some of these older VARI designs. Once again, built for broadcast, not built for,
right.
And the gain reacts different with the slower releases they had fixed as well. So having more control of that output range was important as well from the design perspective.
Very cool. And another thing I want to point out, these are really, really cool. These are not knobs. These are, ready? You want to help me?
Yeah.
Ta-da! So while it's in the rack, you can get a look at your tubes and all that good stuff.
Well, yeah, and this is important to access for some of the controls. Say you want to zero adjust. That's right here.
Right there.
Yep, right next to the meter itself. And we, we haven't talked about the gain reduction tubes used in each and how they're different a little bit. But there are controls for balancing the two tubes that create the gain reduction on this. So a good way to look at this is has one tube. That's that compression tube, right? We'll just call it the compression tube for now and keep it simple. This has two tubes, right? Two pentodes for that compression effect. And whereas, and this is a later compressor, so they sort of evolved.
6 years, something like that?
Yeah, 5-6 years. They sort of evolved into using a one tube here that has two sides perfectly balanced instead of having to manually balance those two tubes.
So I think this is a really important thing. Why are we doing these two products at once? That we mentioned they're variable mu, meaning that what makes this different from a VCA? What makes this different from other types, opto compressors, which may even have tubes in the audio circuit? Tubes in these are doing the compression.
They are. Yes, they are the gain reduction element. Yeah, they are like the gain reduction element.
And I think you even have some examples for it. Because we all love to look at these.
So
things.
I was just talking about this. This is the 6386 tube. This is actually a modern one, the only modern one they make. And yes, so basically two perfectly balanced triodes here is what's creating that compression effect. So
what's in the...
Yeah, as you start turning up that gain, it's really, this is what it's hitting, creating that compression. On this, conversely, like I said, it's an earlier one. They were using two of these remote cutoff pentode tubes, 6SK7s, which are, most of the ones we use are actually from the mid 1940s.
Wow.
So these tubes have been out a couple years, and we're pulling them out of U.S. Navy 1945, and there's this old paper that's never been touched, and it's really cool. It's one of the coolest things we do. So awesome. Yeah, you can see the old military numbers on them. Those are old military tubes, a lot of them. So that is what's creating the compression effect. And in particular, the compression itself and the characteristic of it has to be balanced between these two. So first of all, you got to find two that play nice together. And also create, there's all sorts of other things on our end that's tough, like they changed the hum level, the hiss level, all of that. So we have to select them for that. And then we have to make sure they can actually balance together and play nice together. And that's what, if we open up this lid right here, that's what these two controls do right here. Yeah. These balance controls. So I would recommend not going willy-nilly, just changing these because the device can sound bad really quick.
But from the factory, your guys have already done that for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or for the end user.
Yes, we factory set those. And, a lot of times, like I said, we made life harder with that balancing procedure because we're supercharging the tubes now and negative feedback. We have faster release, all that. So all that plays into the balancing. You could the device, if it's even just the slightest bit out of balance, these two tubes will notice that. So that's, something that we have to look out for. One of the many challenges in building this, aside from the multi-part process of the separate chassis that goes inside the case and things like that.
It's beautiful. Right?
Yeah, it's one of the most lovely things I feel like we've built to date, and I love everything we make, obviously. And and we do have, it looks like some spare tubes with this one as well. And
so it ships with spare tubes?
For this particular one, we do as well. Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So if something 3 years later, this goes down on a session, we don't have to be down. We pop in the new tubes. Okay, awesome. That's incredible.
And so the stay level, I know we mentioned this one uses 9 tubes. This one uses 7 tubes as well. Has the original rectifier tube, 5Y3. Both of these are push-pull designs. So if you're, for those who know what that is, that's a lot of guitar amps, things like that. You can relate to that. Some of the old Fender Tweeds, push-pull designs. They're very famous. So they both use pairs of 6V6 output tubes. It's a huge part of the amplification sound of it. It's a classic sound. This one is so similar to a Fender Tweed, it's not even funny, in my opinion.
Really?
It's a lot of those same tubes. It uses a 12AT7. It uses obviously it's got the compression tubes, the 6386, the 6AL5. We even use the rectifier tube, the OB2 as well, which has a lot to do with the metering of the unit. But, I know we've spoken a lot about this. I do want to mention we did add quite a few functions.
That's what I was getting ready to. So I have a reissue of a Gates.
Yeah.
I do not have your version. And this looks very different than mine right here.
Well,
I know Mark Daniel Nelson is a friend of both of ours. He loves this piece, and he made me jealous because of how he was mentioning how many more options he had than I did. So let's talk about it.
So, this first off, the first one we did was a little bit more standard. It had a different meter. It was called the V-Comp. And when we released that, we were using mainly new old stock 6386 tubes. And if you're a person who buys them for your fairchild or whatever, they are hard to come by in supply that is actually useful in a modern, most of them are, highly microphonic or too much hum. So we moved and we shifted into using the new production JJ6386. Well, in doing that, we created the V-Comp Plus because there were some things that we felt we could add that would add value to the experience. So instead of the original V-Comp, had the standard amount of variable options here on recovery mode, which now it looks like we've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
A bunch.
Yeah, I think we added 2 or 3 more between the V-Comp Plus and the V-Comp.
Okay.
And still, everything can be the same old Gates standard. The slowest recovery mode time is where this is fixed at.
Yeah.
So if you want that original Gates sound, that's going to be there. Single and double is all they had on the original Gates.
That's what mine has, yeah. So you have triple.
Yeah, and triple as well. Yep. And then we added the off function if you just want to bypass compression altogether quickly.
Just run through tubes and transformers?
Yep.
Okay.
And then one thing we did is the Gates has like a fixed input pad, 20 dB, right from the jump. So on the input side, they're ducking 20 dB. So one thing we did is we made that on a switch where you can switch between and you can lessen that pad. Well, when you do that, you just supercharge that input and you're getting a lot more distortion, edge, grit coming in. So when you hit that drive control, you're just letting 5 dB more in on the input.
5?
Yep.
Okay.
5 dB. And then so what happens when you do that, and then you say you have like your fastest recovery mode, which is pretty fast, and triple mode, and you start hitting it hard, we made it so instead of keeping it within the parameters of the cutoff on the 6386, you can go past the cutoff and you can start getting some artifacts, some glitching, some artifacts. You can get some weird pumping. And I know a lot of times you don't want the device to thump and you don't want that, but it can be a really fun, cool effect.
Oh, sure.
So, and there's, it's just going back to the pull tech trick. You want to be able to misuse things. So if you want to use it that way and misuse it and abuse it, you can. And I think that's one of the coolest things about the V-Comp Plus is we push it past its limits.
Gotcha. Now, I know you mentioned that there's things about the topology of these two that are very, very similar, but they're also very unique. So I'm assuming, is this thing able to be faster than this?
They both get pretty fast, but
Really?
yeah, this one is supercharged pretty fast.
Okay.
Like we recommend sometimes, this is about maybe where some of the other, variations of the stay level will be. And it gets really, really fast.
Okay. But all the way here to slow, that's the original. If you're lucky enough to have one of these pieces pulled out of a radio station from 1959, that's where it would be living. Okay.
And you mentioned the topologies. There is obviously some similarities, push-pull amps. And, some of the tubes can kind of like, if you look at it like, like they are similar beasts. And a lot of them were.
Yeah.
And they just changed enough so they wouldn't be able to, sue each other or whatever.
Every broadcast company had a design. That was, okay, yeah. You get the Federal is one of the names of the past. In fact, your forthcoming Fairchild that you're calling it. What's yours?
Oh, the Fair Comp.
The Fair Comp. That is also a variable mute design.
Oh,
Tubes are doing the compression.
Yeah.
So you're going to have 3 of these monsters in your product line. Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, I tell you what if I patch in these back here and we start playing with them?
Oh, yeah.
Boom.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, thanks for the information.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Mix Room here in Nashville. We ran out of time in Daytona Beach to get this segment filmed, but it's not a problem because I have both beautiful variable mute pieces right here beside me, and we're going to give them a go. So the first thing that I have pulled up is a song that you may recognize the artist from other Produce Like a Pro videos that I've done, Maxwell and the Shakes. And it goes a little something like this.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Sounds great, right? He's a great singer, but obviously it's not finished yet. So where I thought we would start, we're going to start right here on the top with the recreation of the Gates stay level. Again, going back to 50s technology. I just love that sound. There's something so musical, so rich, so creamy about a variable mute compressor. So what I've done is I've got it called up, as you'll see here, the slowest recovery time. And it's in double mode, which the original had single and double. So this is going to be pretty accurate to how the vintage one would have sounded, okay? As far as the settings, this is going to be, because the release time was not adjustable on the original. So this is actually an incredible, more useful, version than the original was. So what we'll do, we'll listen to the original again, unprocessed, and then I'll follow it immediately with passing through this, the audioscape.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
And now the audioscape.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Okay, so you notice a couple things. First of all, the tone. It's absolutely a richer tone, undeniable. And you'll see here on the VU meter that we were getting at times about, I'm going to say about 13, 14, 15 dB of compression. The thing is, the slow release, you'll see on the meter right here, it's just about getting back to release mode. Check this out.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
So it's releasing, still not fully released. That is part of what was incredible about them, as we talked earlier, but that's not very useful in today's modern world, where a lot of times our attack times and release times are just different than what these units could do. Let's leave it in double mode, and let's get this recovery time about right in there. And just kind of like see where it starts to fit the mix best.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done. It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
That sounds pretty good. Let's check this out one more time, unprocessed.
It's a chance to make life, and it's a job that's never done.
And now processed.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Love it, fantastic. Now let's go up to triple mode. Now the triple mode, which is something that didn't exist on the original, it's even faster. So the attack time is even faster than it is in single or double. And it kind of encroaching on like Fairchild territory where it's just microseconds. And let's just kind of see what we get out of that.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done. It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
So instead of sounding like it's just kind of holding the whole thing in place and tighter, you'll hear how it's really grabbing when it wants to grab, and not so much when it's not. You know, more like an 1176 would or something. I mean, it's very different than an 1176, but nonetheless, with the VComp Plus, we have that type of capability. We can get the sound of the transformers, the sound of the tubes, but also in a box that's more modern with attack and release options that we may really like. Okay, so that said, what we're going to do is we're going to switch immediately to the 6A. And let's dial something in on that.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job.
Okay, because we do have a high-pass filter in the side chain that we can employ. So I'm definitely going to do that. That's just something that I really, really like doing. So I have this in its stock settings. So the original, if we could go back to 1951 and find an original, this is the attack and release time that it would have.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Okay, so we were getting about 8 dB of compression there.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Okay, now let's start playing with the attack and release a little bit. Let's release a little faster than the original did, because they were notoriously slow.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
I'm going to go to dual mode. So the difference between single and double on the 6A is not going to be as noticeable as you have up here on the VComp Plus. It's really only noticeable when you're really hammering it, and that's what I'm going to do. I mean, we really want to hear what these units are capable of, because that's one thing about a variable mu compressor. There's a lot of compressors, if you go within that range of 3 to 5 dB, that's kind of their sweet spot, and they sound great. But sometimes if you just really want to just pull as much tone as you can out of a unit and really clamp something down, we use it a lot heavier handed than maybe they did originally. Let's push it.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done. It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Start playing with slowing the attack down from the original time constant.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Okay, so just for the sake of our own minds here, here's what it sounded like unprocessed with just a couple dB of compression from when I tracked.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
The same problem we run into, certain words just really pop out, and get a little shrill. And here's with the 6A.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
And then that's pretty heavy-handed. So what you could do, and the way that I do use variable mu compressors very often, I get a certain amount of dB, reduction on them, and then follow it with something, with some character. Maybe I follow it with an 1176 or something like that. So let's kind of hear that. I'm really enjoying playing with this.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done. It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Okay, now that's very musical, but it's not out of control hammered, so I could follow it with something else. So I'm getting the sound of the transformers and the tubes, but it's not being pummeled, right? So at times I was getting up in that 7 dB dynamic range of reduction, but a lot of times it was hovering more around 3. Let's check it out one more time.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's
Another really cool thing that they built into the 6A is this NFB switch right here, negative feedback. So think of it as a drive mode, but it instead of increasing gain, it's just cutting the negative feedback, which it kind of accomplishes the same thing as this drive feature up here, just in a different way, as we discussed earlier. So let's check it out. So this is going to push the whole circuit harder.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job.
Okay, so we'll have to lower that down.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done. It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
So it gets throatier, grittier sounding. Let's do the same thing up here for a test on the VComp Plus. Let's turn the drive, just as a reminder, here's where we left off with it.
It's a chance to make a good life.
Now let's engage the drive, see what it sounds like.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
Okay, so definitely some more grit. We're definitely hitting the circuitry harder, but I also, which increases the compression, but the compression still sounds pretty doggone good. And I think I was getting up to around 17 dB right here.
It's a chance to make a good life, and it's a job that's never done.
That's just what these things are capable of. If you put 15 dB of compression with a VCA compressor or a FET compressor or so many other things, I mean, it's so audible. It's not smooth. I mean, that's not what they're designed to do. You can get really, really heavy-handed with these if you want to, and basically print just a very linear source. Not that that's the best use for it, but you can. That's something that they're capable of. Let's try it on a different source. We're going to go up to a brighter female vocal, and we're going to go to a pop track. And this is my friend Mackenzie Johnson, whom you've heard on the channel multiple times, so look her up. She's fantastic. And this is Unprocessed.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good. Ooh.
Okay, now let's flip that to the processed, and let's start off with the VComp Plus. Let's turn the drive off, because I would want on this, I don't think I'd want the throaty thing. I want to really preserve everything that's beautiful about her voice. Let's check it out.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when.
So this is the fastest recovery time, and this is in double mode.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good.
Okay, so that's about 10 dB of reduction. So here's Unprocessed.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good.
Sounds fantastic. I mean, she's an amazing singer. The tone is beautiful, but it doesn't sound like a record yet. You know, there's parts of it that's just really jumping out. So now let's see if using an old tool by some standards, but with modern features, if it still sounds like modern pop, because to me it is.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now let's try the triple mode, which is even going to be a faster attack yet.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good.
Oh man, that sounds fantastic. Okay, so let's check this out one more time, Unprocessed.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no.
Processed.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good. Ooh.
So I'm using a 1950s tube compressor with everything that's great about the sound of a tube compressor in a very, very modern way on an aggressive pop track that's really punchy. And I think it sounds fantastic. So let's try this. Let's move my insert over, and we're going to switch to the 6A. And we're going to go fast on both of them. and just kind of see where we stand. Let's turn the negative feedback off and see where we stand.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good. If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good. Ooh.
Now let's go back and listen to the original unprocessed one more time.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good.
Okay, the word down and want really jump out.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good.
Okay, cool. And same thing on down. Now let's listen to the processed.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good. Ooh.
That sounds freaking fantastic. So listen to the throatiness on some of her softer words, how it's really bringing it out and enhancing it.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good.
But it doesn't, you can see right there on the screen, you know, how the VU metering in the screen is showing such similar numbers in a sense.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no.
That's the unprocessed, and you'll see it's dancing around a lot because there's a lot more dynamic range. Now, it kind of setting in a similar spot, but sounds so much more powerful.
If he wanted to, he would. He would. Ooh, chasing down when it's no good, no good.
That sounds flipping fantastic. That is impressive. What I want to do is I want to go to a different song, and we're going to listen to something where the pacing of the words is a little different. Still punchy, but not quite as it's a more more Americana, bluegrassy, country kind of thing. So compression wise, it would just be a different animal. So here's the untreated raw vocal.
Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy.
Beautiful. Like her voice is absolutely stunning. You may have heard her on the channel before as well. This is my friend Gloria Anderson, but it's suffering from dynamic range problems. It swings around a lot. So let's go back up here to the top, to the stay level. Let's go to double mode, fastest recovery, and we'll slow it down when we get to the point where it sounds great. Okay.
Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see.
Okay, it's pumping a little bit too much in the fastest release for my ears for a song like this. So let's just start slowing it down.
Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and
Okay, now let's try it in triple because she really is punchy at times.
well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Let's go one more time, unprocessed, and just kind of remember where we started.
Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy in the beginning getting.
Stunning, but let's make it sound like a record.
Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy in the beginning.
Let's try it even slower. Just we're kind of experimenting and having a good time.
Well, I didn't know I'd be more than the things you see, and it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me.
Now we're really finding the spot.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the last.
That is really, really pretty. Now I'm going to switch back to double to where she punches a little harder. It's not quite as grabby.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growth. And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see Past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the laugh and the living, the stories that can't be sold.
I hope you're hearing the same thing that I hear. And that is, I know we're hyper focusing on getting it to set in the track properly, the proper attack time, the proper release time, etc. But the tonality is just beautiful. I mean, all these tubes, all these transformers are just, they're having such a powerful impact on the sonics. Once we get it set to where we want it, it's just such a beautiful thing. Let's switch to the 6A here and listen one. So I'm gonna go raw again, just so we kind of remember where we are starting from.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see.
Fantastic, but it just needs some help.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see.
Okay, so it's just a little fast for me for this kind of a thing. So let's just experiment a little more.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad.
Okay, I think we're getting somewhere now.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the laugh and the living, the stories that can't be sold. They're more than a house.
Okay, loving that. So that is about 7 dB max. We can go heavier handed just to see what it sounds like, but that sounds very musical to me. She's still punchy. We've slowed it down just enough to where, you kind of still feel the energy that she has and the passion, of what she's saying. I'm really digging these settings, and that's right around, 9 o'clock on attack and release in dual mode. So, let's get heavier handed and just kind of see, where we end up.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the laugh and the living, the stories that can't be sold. And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing.
Okay, that's too heavy-handed for this song, but nonetheless, you hear what it's capable of. And let's just slow the attack down a little bit.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the laugh and the living, the stories that can't be sold.
That was a great fun test for me because is it too much compression for this song? Absolutely. But by pushing it, way too hard, I'm really able to hear the attack and release characteristics and the tonality and how even the tonality is or isn't at different sections, whether it's 3 dB of compression, 10 dB of compression, somewhere in between. And so focusing on that instead of how proper it sounds is really telling me a lot about the piece itself. So this isn't the settings I would use on the track, but nonetheless, a really, really fun test for me, and I hope it was for you as well. So you can rewind, or actually, let's just play it again with that heavy-handed compression. And again, we're on the 6A right here, and let's just kind of listen to what it, just how much of a magnificent difference it's making on her vocal.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning getting to know me. Sometimes I can't see past all the good, the bad, and the growing, but the laugh and the living, the stories that can't be sold.
I said that was too much compression, and I was staring at the meter. And, that's one of those things we talk about, mixing with your ears versus your eyes. When I'm looking at the screen and forget about how much I'm compressing, all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, that sounds pretty dang good. That's just a really good example of what these pieces are capable of. 50s technology, 50s sound, the reason we are still chasing those pieces like Fairchild's, Stay Levels, gate Federals, we're still chasing that because of the tonality, all the tubes, all the transformers doing what they do. The cool thing about this is we get that, and they're meticulous, as we talk to Chris in these videos, they're meticulous about the components that they use, new old stock here, modern here, adding features that the original didn't have to make them more usable in a modern studio. I'm just a big fan. I'm a big fan. And I do want to give our friends at Audioscape a shout out. So Warren and I had this idea of doing a series of videos where we teach various types of compressors, and we did the Pultec style tube equalizers, passive equalizers, and we hit our friends at Audioscape up. It's like, hey, you make all of this stuff. So what if we came down and filmed, and you donate some of your time to the users to help educate them on this? And he gave us 2 full days of his time just as an educational tool. So I really want to give a shout out to our friends at Audioscape and Chris Yetter and his entire team for donating so much of their time and even products, to helping grow educational content here on the channel. So big shout out to you, Chris. Thank you so much. And everyone, show them some love by following them on social media and all that good stuff. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. There's going to be more. This isn't the last. And if you're watching this and you're like, hey, I want more, we actually did a series on the optical compressors, so the LA2A, LA3A style, a little while back, and we also just recently did the Pultec passive style EQs. So we did the EQP 1A style with high and low, and then we also did the mid band. So if you haven't seen those yet, go back in time on the channel a little bit and give them a watch. And I think it really helps me to understand how these things are designed, how they're built, how they're made. It just kind of helps me wrap my brain around why they sound the way they do and how I'm going to use them as a result. So it's just really fun content. So I hope you guys are enjoying it too. Happy mixing.